Combs referred to as, among other things, freak-offs. Now, you can be a freak and it's not illegal, but you can't force people to do shit. And this is what I'm getting at. When you have a lot of money and you have no accountability and you want to do whatever the fuck you want to do whenever the fuck you want to do it, I think you can go a little bonkers.
You ain't been calling me and hanging out the way we used to hang out.
I mean, he's complaining to a teenager that you don't really want to hang out with me. Okay, but he didn't do this. Just so you know, he didn't do this. He did not do this. He doesn't have... Oh, my God. Look at all that baby oil. He didn't do this. He didn't have all these bottles of baby oil for nothing.
And we'll fight every day until we don't have to fight anymore.
That means when he's out of money.
He's not afraid of the charges. There's nothing that the government...
Okay, that's just dumb. He's not afraid of the charges? Wouldn't you be afraid of the charges? Where are you? You're in fucking Rikers Island. You goddamn well better be afraid. They just executed 2 search warrants. They've got obliterated serial numbers on firearms. They've got videos and baby oil. You know, what he needs is somebody to tell him what the truth is. You are f***ed. You are absolutely f***ed. You're going to prison for the good portion of the rest of your life. I guarantee you they've offered immunity to the people around him so that they testify. And separate from the freak-offs, Combs, among other things, hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims at times by their hair. And you keep in mind, these victims are going to come in and testify. Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. I don't want to fuck him anymore. Too bad. You're going to fuck him some more. I mean, they also got 1,000 bottles of baby oil. You know, they got terabytes and terabytes of videos. You know, remember I was telling you they got all those electronics? Somebody like this guy wants to preserve that. And I guarantee you it's all there.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Ready?
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminally Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, your very own, you know who you are, your very own personal board-certified criminal defense lawyer. I am here with our content genius, Michael Rivers, who's in front of the camera and behind the camera and behind the microphone and in front of the microphone. He's at the editing desk. He's at everything. He is the reason we're even doing this. So say hello, Michael Rivers.
Hello, CLR fans. Just one thing real quick. The sweatshirts are in, so everybody that pre-ordered, thank you. And you guys are the greatest in the world, so.
All right, so today we're reacting to the indictment of the Diddler, the P. Diddler, the P. Diddy, Sean Puff Daddy Love, as he's referred. What does he call him in the indictment? I don't know. P. Diddy, Sean Puff Daddy Combs. I don't know. This just absolutely floors me. This is what we call, you know, corruption. You know, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, you know. I just can't believe how fucking stupid this guy is. But before we get into the stupidity and the unnecessary crap that he did and why he did it and everything, we're going to get into all that. This is brought to you by eForms.com, a very loyal sponsor of the right-minded legal people who don't engage in sex trafficking and all this other kind of crap. eForms.com is a very effective way to avoid the high costs of a lawyer like me. You know, when you sell something, you need a bill of sale. When you rent in a place, you need a rental agreement. When you have a grandma in her basement who's really not doing the greatest because she's on meth and likes to have her only feet fans, and you really need to get a hold of her finances and make sure she's taken care of, well, you need a power of attorney for that person, don't you? But regardless of what your need is, if you have it in writing, if you need it in writing, get it from eForms.com, because it's a very effective way to protect yourself, stay out of court, or win in court. You don't need a lawyer for that. Go to eForms.com. Okay, so Mr. Diddler, Puff Daddy, he is charged with racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. So in other words, flying prostitutes out to, and male or female. So here's the thing. He is looking at a bunch of time. First, what he did was he had his initial appearance. That was last week. I think it was last Tuesday or something like that. And when you have your initial appearance, the government makes a motion to detain. And in this case, there's a presumption that he's detained while the case is pending. What does that mean? It means you're not entitled to bail. What did I say? Doesn't that seem he hasn't been convicted of anything? No, you're not entitled to bail. So, but it's a rebuttable presumption. So what do? They say initially, all right, on Tuesday, we're going to detain you. The government sought detainment in this case. And Mr. Puff Daddy Combs Diddler, would you like a detention hearing? And so he says, yes, we're going to fight detention. So on Thursday, they fought detention. And what they did is they offered to put up $50 million for bail. I mean, who the fuck does that? Nobody. They offered to have a 24-hour security guard, at his expense, monitor his whereabouts with an ankle bracelet and cameras and basically have him on home detention. And they put up some other various, remember we did this with NBA Youngboy, and he was able to get out. Diddy, I don't know if they found drugs in his hotel, but they found weapons at his house. They found, and he was in New York because he knew he was about to get indicted. And what does the government do? The government doesn't tell you you're going to get indicted. The government says, we're going to arrest you as soon as we get you indicted. And everything's secret. It's under seal. And the reason they do that is twofold. One, they want to have the argument that, you're a risk of flight. And they had some arguments that and they also had witness intimidation issues with Combs. So they don't want him to go attack a witness. So they do everything under seal until he appears in court. The other thing is that they want the argument to say that, we arrested him. He didn't turn himself in, blah, 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 right? But what is he looking at? The statute that he's charged with, that he's been indicted on, he could be looking up to life. And if we look at, let's just look at some of this conduct. Means of the enterprise. It's a 13-page, 3-count indictment, but the conspiracy and what they're doing is just, they had this thing called freak-offs. Combs and other members and associates of the Combs Enterprise, and they're using the Combs Enterprise, for the racketeering statute, because it's saying, the way he acted with all these other people and doing what he did, they acted in concert with each other under the statute, and that comprises of an enterprise. To that end, it's an organization, governed by the racketeering statute. Combs and other members and associates of the Combs Enterprise wielded the power and prestige of Combs' role at the Combs business to intimidate, threaten, and lure female victims into Combs' orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship. What does that sound like? The lover boy method. Combs then used 4 threats of force and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sex acts with male commercial sex workers that Combs referred to as, among other things, freak-offs. Now, you can be a freak and it's not illegal, but you can't force people to do shit. You just can't. You can't I'm going to bring in this male stripper / prostitute, and I'm going to have him fuck you, and if you don't want to do that, I'm going to take away, your recording contract.
Blackball you from the industry, basically, yeah.
Right. Freak-offs were elaborated and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. In arranging these freak-offs, Combs, with assistance of members and associates of Combs Enterprises, transported and caused to be transported commercial sex workers across state lines and internationally. They got terabytes and terabytes of videos. Remember I was telling you they got all those electronics? Somebody like this guy wants to preserve that shit. I guarantee you it's all there. Freak-offs occurred regularly, sometimes lasted multiple days, and often involved multiple commercial sex workers. During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to victims. in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. Well, you got to do that. I mean, how else are you going to keep people, on point? That's force, fraud, or coercion, but it's coercion. Sometimes, unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of victims engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers. After freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. I don't want to fuck him anymore. Too bad. You're going to fuck him some more. They also got 1,000 bottles of baby oil. Oh, my God. Anyway, what's going to happen here, and this case is going to be built on snitches and physical evidence in the form of the recordings that they got in their search last March. Remember I told you, we did an episode on this right after the search happened, and that once they do their forensics, which I guarantee you they got a ton of information. Members and associates of Combs Enterprises, including high-ranking supervisors, security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and other Combs business employees, facilitated the freak-offs, among other things, by booking hotel rooms for the freak-offs. Very easy to prove that. Stocking the hotel room in advance with the required freak-off supplies, including controlled substances, baby oil, lubricant, extra linens, lighting, cleaning the hotel rooms after the freak-offs to try to mitigate the room damage, arranging for travel for victims, commercial sex workers, and Combs to and from freak-offs, resupplying Combs with the requested supplies, delivering large sums of cash to Combs to pay the commercial sex workers, and scheduling the delivery of IV fluids. Delivery of IV fluids. In or about March 2024, during the searches of Combs' residences in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized various freak-off supplies, including narcotics and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. Notice they didn't really charge him with the specific 841. In other words, they didn't charge him with possession of drugs. But they're using the possession of drugs as part of the, overt acts for the RICO. And we'll continue to read here, and then we'll talk about what he's looking at and how dumb this guy is. I mean, he's a fucking billionaire. Why the fuck would you do this shit? You know why? Because you can.
About all the scandal with the Ciroc and stuff like that just ended right before this, so he wasn't really protected by these executives anymore,
Well, who's going to protect him on this? Nobody. Combs subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse to cause the victims to engage in freak-offs. So that's your coercion. Combs maintained control over his victims through, among other things, physical violence, promise of career opportunities, granting and threatening to withhold financial support, and by other coercive means, including tracking their whereabouts, dictating the victim's appearance, monitoring and medical records, controlling their housing, and supplying them with controlled substances. During and separate from the freak-offs, Combs, among other things, hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims at times by their hair. These assaults often resulted in injuries that took days or weeks to heal. And you keep in mind, these victims are going to come in and testify to this shit. And I bet you some of this stuff is already on video. Combs also threatened victims' careers and livelihoods if they resisted participating in the freak-offs. Victims believed they could not refuse Combs' demands and say that's going to be his defense, is that no, this was all consensual. Without risking their financial job security or without repercussions in the form of physical or emotional abuse. Combs also used the sensitive, embarrassing, and incriminating records that he made during the freak-offs as collateral. In other words, I'm going to show your mommy you getting drilled from behind by 3 guys. I mean, that's what he did. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise, including Combs security personnel, at times carried firearms. On more than one occasion, Combs himself carried a brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten others. That's your force, including victims of and witnesses to his abuse. In or about March 2024, and remember we had one of his people sued him about this. Right after Cassie sued him, there was about 3 or 4 other lawsuits. Yeah. And so I think that's what this is referring to. In or about March 2024, during searches of Combs' residence in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, because remember they did both of those simultaneously, law enforcement seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 AR-15s with defaced serial numbers, as well as a drum magazine. You know, why does he need that? He doesn't need that, but he's a gangster. Not really. 50 Cent didn't want to go shopping with him.
Kicking this shit, and he was like, yo, why don't we like go shopping or some shit? I mean, like, I pay for it. And I was like, what the fuck this nigga just say?
That's a gangster. Members and associates of the Combs Enterprises enabled Combs' control over victims by following his directions regarding financial payments to victims, advancing and suppressing victims' career opportunities, and acquiring the controlled substances Combs used to keep the victims compliant. See, using drugs to keep somebody compliant, that's coercion. Members and associates of Combs Enterprises at times witnessed Combs' violence towards the victims or the victims' injuries caused by Combs without intervening. Instead, members and associates of Combs Enterprises helped conceal the violence and abuse by, among other things, assisting Combs in monitoring and preventing victims from leaving locations such as hotel rooms or Combs residences. These occasions included instances in which a victim was required to remain in the building or remain in hiding, sometimes for several days at a time. Why? To recover from injuries Combs inflicted without being publicly observed. In other words, well, we'll let her go and after her bruises clear up. Members and associates of the Combs Enterprise also assisted Combs in locating and contacting victims who attempted to flee his abuse. One of the things that's going to happen here, so notice that Combs is the only one on the indictment. You know, racketeering, you have to be involved with others. It's got to be an organization. You can't just do it by yourself. I guarantee you they've offered immunity to the people around him so that they testify. When Combs' authority or reputation was threatened by the possibility of negative publicity or legal or law enforcement action against him, including in or about late 2023, following public allegations of Combs' crimes, in other words, I think that's Cassie's case, Combs and members of the associates of the enterprise pressured witnesses and victims, including through attempted bribery to stay silent. Remember, he paid her $30 million. Report what they experienced or knew to law enforcement. On phone calls, listen to this. This is just so fucking stupid. On phone calls, Combs and other members and associates of the enterprise, among other things, provided these victims and witnesses with false narratives of events in an effort to conceal the crimes. Combs caused these calls to be recorded on at least 2 occasions. You know, and they got those through their search warrants. You know what we call that? What do we call that? We call that self-snitching. You know, I mean, why would you do that? Why would you record that call? I suppose you could say that they're going to record it. If I was them, I would have recorded that call. But he should never have been on the phone with anybody like that. His people should never have been on the phone. Should have been somebody, shouldn't have been anybody. Here's what kills me. You've got a guy in Sean P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, you know, Combs, whatever his rapper name is, whatever, who made a lot of money. I mean, he was popular, dude. He had several different businesses and was making, you know, by all means, by any account, was a multi-millionaire, if not a billionaire.
And not to mention the fact that he made a heap load of money after Biggie Smalls died. Because remember, he died in 1997. He had all the rights to his music, right? And Life After Death came out, and two more subsequent albums came out. Those were huge, and those were biggest.
Right. So he and this is what I'm getting at. When you have a lot of money and you have no accountability and you want to do whatever the fuck you want to do whenever the fuck you want to do it, I think you can go a little bonkers. And that doesn't mean that you are bonkers to the extent that you are legally not responsible for your actions, right? You just turn into a freak and you have your freak offs. You know, you can't go hire hookers to come into town to fuck your staff, fuck your proteges, and put it on film for your own enjoyment against their will, which is what he did. You can't do that. And the guidelines, he's looking at a maximum of life, but I don't think he's really, I think it's around somewhere between 25 and 30 years. I think that's what the guidelines are going to be for him. You know, I want to say 327 months is about what he's looking at, but I'm not entirely sure because I'd have to get all the permutations of the enhancements because there's specific enhancing factors with the violence, with the number of victims, with everything else that's going on. Now, his lawyer gave a press conference as I said at the beginning of this video, Mr. Combs or Diddy or Sean, he had his detention hearing. Now his lawyer, here's the thing about this kind of a case. You know, he has to have a defense. He has to have a lawyer, obviously. Mark Agnifilo is his lawyer. And he comes out, you know, and it's a high profile. This is as high profile as it gets, right? But he's in the same jail where I believe he's in the same jail where Epstein was. He's on suicide watch. He's been denied bail, and his lawyer comes out and makes these statements. Let's take a look.
So this was the first step. We have a bail appeal scheduled for tomorrow at 3:30 in front of Judge Carter, the district judge assigned to this case. I think that we made the points that we.
The way this works is this. So when you have a bail hearing, you know, your initial detention hearing, you go before a magistrate. So there's two. So you have a district court judge, and then you have the magistrate. The magistrate's kind of like a buddy judge. They handle all the pretrial stuff. So if you have a motion to suppress, if you have a preliminary hearing, if you have a detention hearing, all the stuff that you have beforehand, those are all heard by a magistrate judge. They don't hear trials. They don't take pleas. They don't get involved in sentencings. But if you don't like what the magistrate says, in other words, he denied us bail, well, then you can appeal that to the district court judge. If that doesn't work, you can appeal it to the circuit court. If that doesn't work, the Circuit Court of Appeals. If that doesn't work, you can go up the chain to the Supremes. But to grant or deny bail in a situation like that is really within the discretion of the court. And absent some showing of abuse of authority, they're not going to change the magistrate's ruling. So Agnifilo is going to charge him a shit ton of money. They're going to look and see at every avenue. And these New York law firms, I know how they work. They're not going to say, okay, we're going to just bill you for a set amount. They're going to say, okay, this is what it's going to take. These are hourly fees. And, and guess what? Millions and millions and millions of dollars later. Oh, I'm sorry, you're out of funds? Oh, fucking bye-bye. That's what they're going to do. Here's how I work. All right, I'll take your case for $1 million. All right? No matter how long it takes, you got me, and I'm using million for euphemistically. And so they're going to bleed him dry. And guess where he's going to wind up? In the same position as if he went in, pulled his pants down, and turned around and mooned the judge. He's going to be in the same spot. Except if he did that, he'd still have his money. This way, he's going to be broke as a joke. And he's going to give him this song and dance. I think we got this. You know, what he needs is somebody to tell him what the fucking truth is. You are fucked. You are absolutely fucked. You're going to prison for the good portion of the rest of your life. Guess what Diddy's going to do? He is not your gangster. He would probably snitch. But guess what? He's at the top of the heap. There's nobody to snitch on except for maybe somebody who's getting him the drugs. And who gives a shit about a low-level drug dealer when you got P. Diddy in custody?
I just want to add one thing about his lawyer. He was the ex-Manhattan assistant district attorney and former supervisor at the U.S. Attorney's Office who had a 2-year stint as chief of violent crimes unit prosecuting gangs. Is known for spending nearly 2 decades working for Combs. So
Well, Diddy should ask this guy, Agnifilo, and I don't know him, and I don't have any reason to badmouth him. I just know how these New York law firms work. How many federal cases have you gotten acquittal on? I haven't, anytime I got close to getting an acquittal, they dismiss the case. That's what they do in federal court. The feds have like a 96, 97% success rate. And in this case, half this stuff is irrefutable. The only thing that's refutable is the consent about it, right? That's the only thing that would be in dispute. Whether it happened or not, they're going to probably have the sex worker that was there. They're going to have the hotel records. They're going to have the receipts for all the fucking baby oil. And they have the baby oil. They have the actual baby oil. They got 1,000 bottles of baby oil. Who needs 1,000 bottles of baby oil? I suppose if you're having multiple freak-offs. But let's see what else he has to say.
We've been wanting to make. I think he came out. Mr. Combs is a fighter. He's going to fight this to the end. He's innocent.
The end of his money.
He came to New York to establish his innocence. He's not afraid. He's not afraid of the charges. There's nothing that the government said in their
Okay, that's just dumb. He's not afraid of the charges? Wouldn't you be afraid of the charges? Where are you? You're in fucking Rikers Island. You goddamn well better be afraid. They just executed 2 search warrants. They've got obliterated serial numbers on firearms. They've got videos and baby oil.
presentation today that changes anyone's mind about anything. He's been looking forward to this day. He's been looking forward to clearing his name, and he's going to clear his name. And we're going to stand by his side as he does. We believe in him wholeheartedly.
Until he runs out of money. Here's the thing. I shouldn't give him any shit because he's just doing his client's bidding. But these pre-trial posturing and that's all it is. It's just pre-trial posturing. He's not concerned. You damn well better. Then why he's on suicide watch? Because he's looking at life in prison. He's looking at a bullet. This is just like R. Kelly. This is just, R. Kelly was bad, was really bad. And did you see R. Kelly in the interview he did with what's her name? I mean, he freaked out. Why did he freak out? Because he saw the freight train coming. Guess what, Diddy? I got news for you. There's a freight train coming, and you are tied to those motherfucking tracks. And your lawyer, he's got a chisel, he's got a blowtorch, and he's got all kinds of other tools in his toolbox. And nothing he can do can remove you from those tracks because that train is coming, and that train is the U.S. government, and they're going to run a train on you.
He didn't do these things. This was a
bullshit. He didn't. Oh, so this indictment right here is just a bunch of shit. They're just making all this shit up. They don't have anything on video. They have his recordings. They have his recordings of intimidating witnesses. This is what I don't like about when you go in front of the cameras and you're doing stuff for the media. He didn't do these things. You lose credibility. Less is more. He's going to fight this. I believe in his innocence. He has the right to the presumption of innocence, which he does in court, not where we sit. I mean, this is just a public opinion, right? So he has the right, and that's what I would do. But to say that he didn't do any of this, then what's with 1,000 bottles of baby oil?
Not to mention that video of him dragging Cassie Ventura down. You remember just watching that?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When you say he didn't do any of this, there's video. There's video evidence of it. To get out there and to shill for. Here's the thing. It's a defense lawyer's job to advocate for your client. It's not a defense lawyer's job to say things that aren't true.
10-year relationship. There's no coercion. There's no crime. There's basically just, someone who brought a civil case and now is finding themselves as a witness in a criminal case.
Cassie ain't the only one. Cassie is not the only one.
Everything's good?
Everything's
Selling
great.
out arenas and
Yeah,
everything?
man.
Starting to act different, huh?
No,
you
not
ain't
really.
been calling me and hanging out the way we used to hang out.
Well, I mean, you haven't. I mean, you try to get in contact with me, through all my, partners and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But you never really got my number, so.
Correct.
My
Okay.
number?
Yeah,
Comfortable he is. Notice how he said, "You haven't been hitting me up the way we used to."
This is what I don't like when, when I have a case that's in the public, and I've had plenty of them, I say very little. And to say he didn't do this or didn't do that, let's just see what did he do?
And appears to corroborate some of the allegations of abuse against music mogul Sean Diddy Combs.
Okay, he's running down the hallway in a trial.
The video captured on multiple cameras.
She's trying to get away.
Assaulting his then-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, in a hallway at a Los Angeles hotel in March 2016.
But he didn't do that. This matches the indictment exactly. So tell me he didn't do that? I mean, this is what I don't like about lawyers that kind of go off the rails just to do their client's bidding. You can be an effective advocate without lying.
And we're going to fight this case with everything we have, as is he, and eventually
No, you're going to fight with everything he has, not with everything you have.
he's going to be shown to be innocent. And so tomorrow we fight again, and we'll fight every day until we don't have to fight anymore.
Okay. Holy shit. Okay, but he didn't do this. Just so you know, he didn't do this. He did not do this. He doesn't have. Oh my God, look at all that baby oil. He didn't do this. He didn't have all these bottles of baby oil for nothing. He ain't getting out, and he isn't getting out in large measure because you've got, as recently as I think December 2023, or shortly thereafter, witness intimidation. Courts don't like that. You've got drugs. Courts don't like that. You've got firearms. Courts really don't like that. And you've got violence. So you've got a whole host of things that are really unovercomable, if that's a word, that P. Diddy cannot overcome with regard to detention. So what does that mean? So that means he's going to sit while this case is pending. And, their lawyers are going to have to sift through shit ton of electronics. You think that Mark Agnifilo is going to sift through the shit himself? He's not, but he's going to bill for it. He's going to have his associates do that, or paralegals, or whoever. Whenever you see a former prosecutor turned criminal defense lawyer, I'm always suspicious of that. I don't know why. I just don't think they're good trial lawyers, from the defense perspective. But I don't know him, and he may be a very, very fine lawyer. But he's making stuff that's just not true. You saw what happened with Cassie. I mean, his client's a piece of shit. I mean, I hate to say this, but you put your hands on somebody like that and you drag them, and then you're forcing these people to have sex. It really is like Caligula. I mean, it is just you're powerful. You're a puppet master, and then you jerk off to this shit. I mean, what the
I've never made any sense.
Let's have another shot.
No, let's have another shot. I'm in. Okay,
We need to treat our guests the right way.
Let's get them shots too. Come on.
No, this me and you.
All right, I need a shot.
Yeah, I got your shot,
this
bro.
mine? Okay.
Yeah, I just have a seat. It's all together. Me and you. Eyes.
Let's do it. Spilling it all over.
Eyes. Yeah, I love this drink.
Where you put my bag
I like
at?
when you like this, Daddy.
Yeah, where you put my bag
Daddy,
at,
I like
Mr.
when
Lee?
you
It's
scrambling
right
and
here.
scraping for shit.
No. I got
I
notes
like
and
that.
shit. I'll be practicing. I got
Yeah,
notes
there you
and
go.
shit.
Got your notes.
Okay, yeah, I'm not gonna go over with that one.
See where I look
miss
back on
me?
where I became.
Did you miss me though? For real? Because it seems like a thing.
I
with
miss
this
partying
birthday
with
party,
Puff, man. I
Man,
miss
but I'm
partying
talking about
with
for your birthday.
Huh?
Why won't you party with me for your birthday,
Why don't you take him shopping?
man?
We partied for my birthday before. You came to my party. And
No, but me and you ain't never really party. You know what I'm saying? Eyes.
So Diddy's got this complex. So let's just you hear how he was in that. Well, you don't party with me on your birthday. Oh, it's like it's a sick thing. Listen to what he says to Bieber.
Everything's good? Selling out arenas and everything? Starting to act different, huh? You ain't been calling me and hanging out the way we used to hang out.
Because I don't want to suck your dick anymore. I mean, what the fuck?
I mean, you try to get in contact with me, through all my, partners and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But you never really got my number, so.
Right. Okay.
My number?
I mean, he's complaining to a teenager that you don't really want to hang out with me anymore. Why would you want to hang out with a teenager to begin with? I mean, I know it's Justin Bieber, but I mean, why would you guilt a teenager for not wanting to hang out with you? Honestly.
And look at how uncomfortable Justin Bieber is.
He's absolutely uncomfortable. But I suspect he's like that with everybody. And then, so that you've got a character. Anyway, we don't need to dissect his personality. But you've got somebody who's flawed, a very, very flawed individual. So, I mean, this is a calculated individual. There's no question about it. And you're going to see, they're going to try this case. They're not going to offer him anything. I mean, if they offered him 10 years, he should take it. But they're not going to offer him 10 years. My guess is the guidelines are up around 300 months or thereabouts with all the different things that he's looking at. And so, we'll keep following this, but this is going to be a federal case that's going to go down in history as everybody's going to come out later and say, you know what? I told you I knew. I knew about, I knew about him. All the celebrities are going to come out. Where's Jennifer Lopez? Wasn't she engaged to him for a while? She should have known him better than anybody. I mean, this guy's a flawed individual. He wanted to take 50 Cent shopping. I mean, that just tells you who he is. All right. So here's the long and short of it. So the next phase is they're going to have a motion hearing. And so his lawyers will, in all likelihood, file a motion to suppress the evidence obtained from the search warrants that were executed in Miami and Los Angeles. It'll go nowhere. It'll go out. But guess what? He will be billed through the fucking nose for those hearings. Because they'll have to prepare, they're going to have some testimony, and then blah, blah, blah. They're going to ask for a Franks hearing, that they're not going to get a Franks hearing. Just all the different things that they're going to ask for. And it's just going through the motions, really. He's got and I'm saying this off the cuff, so I don't really know exactly what the evidence is because I'm not involved in the case. But I know how these things work. And so they're going to have a motions hearing. And he can ask for different things in the motions hearing, like participating in voir dire, requesting that the government retain their rough notes, suppression of certain evidence, that kind of stuff. And once they do that, then they'll get a trial schedule. But this is a case that probably will be deemed a complex case, so it'll be pushed out a ways. So don't expect a trial within the next year on this case. And guess what? Diddy's going to sit for the next year. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. This has been our reaction to the indictment of P. Diddy, Sean Puff Diddler Combs, the Diddler in Chief.
Love.
God. Anyway, I don't have a lot of compassion for people who abuse other people, especially like when it comes to sex and that kind of stuff. So we'll see you next time here at Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, your board-certified criminal defense lawyer with our content genius, Michael Rivers. Make sure you go to clrbrucerivers.com to get merch.
The hoodies are in. The hoodies are in.
And we'll see you next time here at Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter. Look for us on Facebook. Sign up for Patreon. And we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, board-certified criminal defense lawyer, coming to you with my pearl handle pistol cufflinks, so graciously gifted to me by our content genius, Michael Rivers, who's behind the camera and he just feeds me my lines. None of this is me. This is all hand-dealt, spoon-fed by our content genius, Michael Rivers. I've got no brain of my own. Let's begin. We're going to start this episode with this as a reaction to Donald Trump and his latest indictment out of Miami with the DOJ and the document case. But before we get to that, I want to tell you a little story about my basement. My basement has just been the absolute source of all kinds of shenanigans. Now, my grandfather has moved in, and my grandmother and grandfather, they're into some weird shit in my basement. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but it smells a lot like ganj. I'm not sure if that's what they're doing. But I got to get them out of there. And I don't trust them to be alone. So I got to have anybody come and get them out of my house. So I've enlisted the help of a lawyer. And so I went to esign.com. You download the app. You get 3 free signatures a month. And you're able to get a restraining order. You can get I can all do it remotely. So I don't have to leave the house. So I can keep an eye on their marijuana growing operation in my basement. Can you believe that? I can't even believe they're doing that. It's an effective way to remotely do business so you don't have to go into the office. Everybody's working remote these days, and so if you need a power of attorney, you need a eviction notice for your grandparents, or whatever you need esign.com, because if it's not esign, no one signs. All right, so let's get right into this. I've read the indictment. I've read the whole thing cover to cover. It's 44 pages, and let me tell you what I have found out about this indictment. Trump is up against a very meticulous prosecutor here. Jack Smith is just taking his time, and everybody's like, oh, we should indict him right now, blah, blah, blah. Whether you're a Trump fan or not, it really doesn't matter, because let's look at the facts. And one of the things that I've learned about looking at the facts of this case is that they have dates, times, and they go back to his knowledge. One of the things that Trump has to know is that these documents were secured, or not secure, but confidential or classified or top secret or whatever the classification, and that they were government documents. Because as a former president, you're not entitled to keep government documents, whether you're Joe Biden, whether you're Mike Pence, or whether you're anybody else. So I want to just tell you, before we get into the facts, here's what's at risk here. There's basically 3 statutes, or 2 statutes. You got 793E, that's the illegal retention of defense documents. That's the big one. The other ones are 1512 and 1519. Those are basically, and when I say 1512 and 1519 and 793, I'm talking about 18 U.S. Code, and then that's the statute number. So it's the Chapter 18 United States Code, and then 793E. So let's kind of go with the 793E first, and let's talk about what the guide. See, these sentences are all driven by the guidelines, okay? So if you look up the guidelines, you look up gathering national defense information. This is 2M 3.2 and 2M 3.3. These are really high guideline sentences. So if it's top secret information, it's 35. What does that mean? Well, you go into the sentencing table, which is right here in the front of the book. 20-year statutory maximum, right? But if you look at the offense severity level, and you go down to 35, and then you go to criminal history category 1, because it's a grid, it gives you what the guideline range is for that level. At a 35, it is 168 to 210 months. So whenever you hear somebody on the news talk about he's facing a maximum of 20 years, nobody ever gets the maximum, okay? Especially if you're a first-time offender. Unless there are some aggravating circumstances, and that would require a departure upward of what the guide. Generally, people fall within the guidelines. So if it's top secret information, the guideline range for Mr. Trump is 168 to 210 months. Now, he's not going to admit that he did anything wrong, but if he did, you could get a 3-point reduction for acceptance of responsibility. So that would bring you down to 121 to 151. But long short of it is that if it's top secret information, he's looking at a level 35. Now, if it's otherwise, if it's not top secret information, it's a level 30. And a level 30 would be 97 to 121 months. So basically 14 to 17 years, somewhere in there. And then you're looking at level 30, 8 to 10 years there, basically. That gives you kind of some semblance of what the guideline range, and the guideline range is one of the factors that a court has to consider when determining a sentence. And I argue the federal sentencing guidelines all the time. And almost every time I say, oh, you should give him probation, you should do this, and sometimes the prosecutors come along with me, but most of the time they don't. And now here's the other thing. The feds have 96% conviction rate or something like that. It's super high. And why do they do that? Because they don't bring cases they think they're going to lose. So the thing about Trump and this case, he's indicted along with this Waltine Nauta. Waltine Nauta was a personal valet. He was in the Navy. He was a personal aide to Donald Trump, and he followed him to Mar-a-Lago. And the reason that he is involved in this is because he moved a lot of the documents. Trump's direction did not tell the government where the documents were, so he helped conceal them. The other statute that we're looking at here is 1512 and 1519, and both of those fall under an obstruction charge. And that starts out at a level 14. So in a sense, who gives a shit about that? Because that's really not that big a deal. However, it would be a big enough deal to Nauta to be able to maybe cooperate, and he may already be cooperating, who knows. Because you can get indicted and still be a cooperator. And if he's cooperating, there's a thing called 5K, you're a snitch, and 5K, you get a reduction for rendering substantial assistance to the government. Okay, that being said, what did he do? I mean, what did Trump do? He brought a ton of shit to Mar-a-Lago and to Bedminster, actually. In July 2021, at the Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster, New Jersey, during an audio-recorded meeting with the writer and a publisher and two members of his staff, none of whom possessed security clearance, Trump showed and described a plan of attack that Trump said was prepared for him by the Department of Defense and a senior military official. I think this is the thing they were talking about Iran with Milley, General Milley. Trump told the individuals that the plan was highly confidential and secret. He also said that as president, I could have declassified it, and now I can't, but this is still secret. So when he tries to say that he was under the impression that he could just declassify something just by thinking about it, yes, bullshit. You can't. I mean, and there's a bunch of these kinds of little factoids in here where Trump kind of shoots himself in the foot. And the other part of it, it's this disclosure and the retention of the documents that's really at issue here. In August or September of 2021 at the Bedminster Club, Trump showed a representative of his political action committee who did not possess a security clearance, a classified map related to military operations, and told the representative that he should not be showing it to representative and that the representative should not get too close. So, I mean, we use that, well, not we, because I'm a defense lawyer, but a prosecutor will use that to show an awareness by Trump of him breaking the law and how he knows as a consciousness of guilt. So then you have an investigation that gets opened by the Department of Justice as referred to by NARA, the National Archives. They want to get their documents back. They know he's got them, and he says, I don't have them, or he's stonewalling them. And so the DOJ opens an investigation. They subpoena the documents. He talks to his lawyers and say, what if we tell him we just don't have them? What if we just delay and don't respond to the subpoenas? What if we destroy the documents? And that's all in this indictment. And that's significant because two of their lawyers appeared before the grand jury. You know how rare that is? I've been doing this for 25 years. I've never had to do that. I've never given up a client secret, ever. And this is just unheard of. They went to a judge, and the judge says, no, you're going to have to testify, because this is part of the crime fraud exception. So if the client is using you as a lawyer to further a crime, bye-bye. You can't maintain that secret. Okay? So his lawyers are all over this indictment and are now witnesses against him. You realize that? That is just crazy. But it's all because of his chutzpah. I mean, nothing is, no rules apply to Donald Trump. He gets this false sense of security. And when you get a false sense of security or your balls get so big that you don't think anybody can touch you, you make mistakes. And he made a lot of mistakes here. And over a long period of time. You saw when Pence had documents and he figured it out, he called the FBI right away and he turned them in. Same thing with Biden. Biden had some and he turned them right in and invited the FBI to his house to search. Well, we have here, and we'll show you some of these documents. I mean, there's like hundreds of boxes and hundreds of documents. Not all of the things in all the boxes were classified, but there's hundreds of classified documents. And really what matters more than anything else is not just that they're classified, they're defense documents. That's why the guidelines are so damn high. So when you look, because sometimes you can have a statutory maximum that's high, but the guidelines would be low because it's a certain type of offense, like a low-level drug case, for example. Because like the quantity of drugs is what drives the sentencing guidelines on drug cases. Not so here. It's the nature of the defense, or nature of the charge itself, that they're defense documents. You've got, 37 counts, and what's really implicated here are, and you can see it on the front page of the indictment. It's the 793, 1512, 1512, and 1001. Those are false statements. So you've got the retention of defense documents. You've got obstruction and making false statements. The obstruction and making false statements, who kind of cares about that? Because those are fairly low level, like I said, 14 and even lower than that. This is not a little case for Donald Trump. When I say he's at a level 35 or a level 30, depending upon the types of documents that he's looking at, it's serious, and the guidelines are high. And when you look at the broad scheme of everything he's looking at, like the Manhattan District Attorney's Office with 34 counts there, remember, you also have the January 6th grand jury that's been impaneled. So that is coming for him. And then you've got the DA in Fulton County, Georgia, Fani Willis, and she's got a grand jury that's going to probably indict sometime in either late July or early August. She's already made it known to the court down there that she needs to have security measures in place for what she's about to do. And then you've got the AG of New York, who's got who in October is going to try the tax fraud case to the tune of $250 million, going after his pocketbook. That's totally civil. Let's just kind of go through. You know what I always say: stop self-snitching. Well, his own words are going to come and bite him in the ass. In paragraph 22 of the indictment, on August 18th, Trump said, "In my administration, I am going to enforce all laws concerning the protection of classified information. No one will be above the law." Well, one of the things that he did is he increased the penalty for the retention of classified information. Oh, interesting. On September 6th, Trump said, "We also need to fight this battle by collecting intelligence and then protecting our classified secrets. We can't have someone in the Oval Office who doesn't understand the meaning of the word confidential or classified." So if you look at some of these statements, Trump, in his own words, tells you how serious it is, and he flies in the face of that. If you look at where these things were stored, they were stored in a ballroom. They were stored in a bathroom. They were stored in a shower. They were kind of willy-nilly. You've got so much in this that's so specific, and it's only going to get worse and compile upon him. And how you can keep a straight face and go out and do what he does, it's just beyond me. I would be stressed to the max. So this has just been our reaction to the indictment on Donald Trump, to show you real world what the guidelines are, what he's really facing, and how this could really impact any kind of criminal sentence just on the document case. So we'll see you next time here in Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you sign up for Patreon, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, subscribe. We'll see you next time on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another episode of CLR, Criminal Lawyer Reacts, where I am a board-certified criminal defense lawyer, and I actually try cases. I have a thriving practice where I am focused mainly on criminal defense, and here at our channel, we like to focus on, we react to some drill music, and we react to issues of the day. And today we're talking about Henry Ruggs III. Henry Ruggs III is a guy who was playing for the Raiders. He was playing for the Raiders. He was recently released because he was in Las Vegas driving his new automobile and crashed it while drunk, and he's now charged with major crimes. Let's talk about who Mr. Ruggs is first. First of all, he's 22 years old, a wide receiver, played on Bama championship team, and was a #1 draft pick. You talk about having the ticket. He had the ticket. He had all the talent in the world and nothing but promise and opportunity ahead of him. Well, he was recently arrested for a driving incident that happened in Las Vegas. He was traveling at 156 miles per hour in a sports car with his girlfriend. And his car veered out of control. He's driving in a residential neighborhood and hit a 23-year-old woman and her dog, and trapping them in the car. The car actually caught on fire, and she lost her life. His passenger next to him, his girlfriend, she was injured as well. The police also found a loaded firearm on the floorboard of the vehicle. Let's get into a little bit about what we're talking about here. Criminal vehicular operation is when you operate a vehicle and you cause substantial bodily harm. Criminal vehicular homicide is where you are operating a vehicle under the influence of alcohol, and you're exceeding the legal limit, which is .08, and you cause the death. And that's what happened here. So by the ordinary process of law, he was arrested. They took blood from him, and now he just appeared in court. Let's kind of, I'm going to show you, first of all, if you take a look here, this is what his vehicle looked like. Very, very serious car accident. Now, let's talk about what the next process is once you get arrested. Once you get arrested, they have to bring you to see a judge within a certain period of time, generally within 36 to 48 hours, depending upon your jurisdiction. Once you get in front of the judge determines two things. This is like your initial appearance. Number one, they read you the charges, or you can waive reading of the charges. Then they determine the conditions of release. And in a homicide, there are other factors involved in the conditions of release, mostly the danger to the public. There's two things. There's one, whether you're going to return to court, risk of flight, and then the other one is whether you're a danger to the public. And so let's kind of watch the opening argument, or the argument that the prosecutor has for what he thinks the bail should be in this case.
And I'll next hear from Mr. Baumann the state's position on Mr. Ruggs' custody status.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the record, Eric Baumann for the State Bar number 9755. Your Honor, as you mentioned, the incident, the crime and its tragic consequences took place yesterday, approximately 3:39 a.m. Northbound Rainbow Boulevard, just south of Spring Valley, which I note for the record is a residential area. Defendant was traveling at beyond an excessive rate of speed. Eyewitnesses put the defendant at over 100 miles an hour,
Now, when you're traveling over at 100 miles an hour in a residential neighborhood, that's not good. And here's the other thing. The time of day that this happened was 3:39 in the morning. 3:39. Can I tell you something, guys? Guys, listen to me. Nothing good happens after midnight. All right? Don't be the FOMO where you're going to like worry about, what's going to happen if I don't go to this party. You know what? If you went to bed at 11:30 and your buddy went to the party and got pissed drunk and gets popped on the way home, guess who's better for it? The guy who didn't go to the party. So let's tune back in.
We were able to confirm through investigation through a download of the airbag control module from his vehicle that at 2.5 seconds prior to impact, he was traveling at 156 miles per hour, northbound on Rainbow Boulevard. I would note that in my 24 plus years of prosecuting vehicular crimes, that is the highest speed I have ever heard of in an incident like this.
So this is kind of arguing the case. It's their prerogative to do that. And you're going to hear that in a little bit from the excellent David Chesnoff, who is part of the board of American Board of Criminal Lawyers. Fantastic lawyer.
At the point of airbag deployment, the vehicle was traveling at 127 miles per hour. I would note further into investigation there was a loaded firearm found in the driver's floorboard of the vehicle.
In the loaded firearm charge, it's not illegal for him to have the firearm, but it's illegal for him to be intoxicated and be in possession of the firearm while in a motor vehicle. But that's the least of his problems.
Defendant's vehicle struck the rear of the victim vehicle with such violent force that it ignited the fuel tank. 23-year-old female occupant and her dog died as a result of the fire caused by the crash. Furthermore, we anticipate filing a second count of DUI causing substantial bodily harm as a result of injuries to defendant's passenger.
So you've got two victims in a case like this. One, the decedent, that's the person who died in the other car, and then you've got his passenger. And when you have more than one victim, what the court can do is they can sentence those things consecutively, and sometimes it's mandatory consecutive. I don't think it is in this case, especially because it's the first time.
Defendant was argumentative and uncooperative with both police and medical workers throughout the investigative process.
That is never a good sign when you're argumentative and uncooperative. You don't call the cops names. You don't try to fight with the cops. Even if it's an illegal arrest, you don't have the right to resist. And it just never helps you. Better just to shut your mouth and then your lawyer can shove it up their ass later.
However, a search warrant was obtained. Blood was drawn from the defendant within 2 hours of the time of driving. His blood alcohol level.
So when you're stopped for a DWI, if they have a breath test, it's generally a crime to refuse. However, in this case, they got a warrant because it's a search and seizure to take your blood. So in order to get your blood, they have to have a warrant. And so they get a warrant. Now you can't refuse, and they'll forcibly take your blood from you.
Level was measured by the Metropolitan Police Department Forensic Laboratory to be .161.
So .161 is pretty intoxicated. It's double the legal limit.
Within 2 hours of the time of driving, that is more than twice the legal limit. Furthermore, I would note that at that blood alcohol level, he was also, under the laws of the state of Nevada, illegally in possession of a firearm. I would note this is particularly tragic. Since 2013, the National Football League Players Association has contracted with various rideshare services, specifically to provide free ride shares availability to their membership, specifically to prevent tragedies such as this.
Now, here's the thing. He's right. He's absolutely right. But he's inflaming this to make it sensational. And I don't want to take anything away from what happened because it is a tragedy. There's a loss of life here. It's not an intentional loss of life, but that's not what he's charged with. But when he's going on and on and on, and and to try to keep him in custody.
Now, in consideration of bail, I would note for the court that the defendant is facing significant mandatory prison time. Under the charges we anticipate filing, there's a maximum of 46 years in the Nevada State Prison to which he's exposed.
First of all, it's a first-time offense. There's no way he's getting 46 years. It just isn't going to happen. But there is a mandatory 2-year prison sentence, and that is something that the prosecutor cannot negotiate away. In fact, it's written in the statute that the penalty, the 2-year mandatory minimum, cannot be negotiated. I mean, they can negotiate it up from there, but they can't negotiate anything less than 2 years.
Upon the evidence gathered and analysis done thus far, I can represent as an officer of the court that the likelihood of conviction is high. Based on defendant's reckless, wild, and out-of-control course of conduct that already has resulted in the loss of human life, the defendant has established that he's a danger to our community. Any release should be conditioned on high-level electronic monitoring, surrender of defendant's passport if he has one, a strict no-driving order, and 24/7 alcohol monitoring. Finally, I would submit that the court should consider the defendant likely has significant financial means at his disposal to post bail. For these reasons, the state is requesting bail be set in the amount of $1 million with the previously mentioned release conditions.
Now, $1 million is an awful lot of money on a case like this. Generally speaking, you don't have that high of bail on a criminal vehicular operation or a criminal vehicular homicide case. So that was the prosecution trying to just showcase basically what the case is about. And I think they did a pretty good job. They sensationalized it a bit, but $1 million is too high. And wait till you hear Mr. Chesnoff. This is how you deliver a bail argument.
As the court knows, the purpose of this appearance at this point in time is to determine the conditions of release, not to argue the merits of the case, although the facts of the case are one factor for the court to consider. The court knows that bail is not punishment. If there is ever going to be punishment, that's for another day. What we have, Your Honor, is a young man who has never been in trouble before, from what we understand, never a traffic violation.
The defendant's history is a big factor in determining what kind of release conditions to set. Because if he's got a record a mile long, why would we take a chance on him?
He has consistently followed rules and regulations. He played for a major Division I national championship football team, followed all the rules, and was an excellent teammate.
You don't become the #1 draft pick and playing on a championship and then now NFL team by skirting rules, generally speaking. This is a total product of immaturity.
Player. The same applies to the scrupulous investigation that the NFL does when deciding who's going to be in the league when teams draft. His background is impeccable. When he came to Las Vegas, Your Honor, he immediately contributed to the community. He's been working with 3 Square. He works with charities at home in Montgomery, Alabama. Comes from a very close-knit family, has 5 brothers, never been in trouble. We have no quarrel with the conditions that the state is recommending.
See, what the state did, and I think they knew what they were doing, but they set up, I mean, basically, we think these would be conditions that he should be released on. And we think these are reasonable conditions. And the best thing you can do in that case, because the judge is probably going to order those conditions anyway, the best thing that you can do is just agree with them and say, yeah, those are reasonable. We don't have any quarrel with those.
Save and except for what we believe would be an excessive bail amount. The state just commented that he has financial resources. The court may not be aware, Mr. Baumann may not be aware, but he was released by the team. So the substantial financial worth that Mr. Baumann is referring to is now in question. The real question for you, Your Honor, is will he come to court and will he pose a danger? The conditions that have been proposed by the state significantly and sufficiently cover that. The question of the monetary is equally covered by the surrender of the passport and the home confinement. We asked in our papers, which Mr. Baumann has received, for a bail of $150,000. We would point out to the court that most recently,
So 150,000 is pretty reasonable. You only need to come up with 15,000, usually 10%, and you put up a bond. You don't get that money back, or you can put up 150,000 to the court, and then you get that back at the end of the court proceeding. But now, listen to this. This is, I think, brilliant. The way he did an analogy of somebody else that was in a similar situation, but not a professional athlete.
a policeman who lived out of state in Connecticut.
You hear that was a policeman that lived out of state.
It was granted a bail in a similar circumstance for $100,000. We think perhaps because of the publicity that's attendant to this, the district attorney is trying to send a message. That's their prerogative. But Your Honor's job is to decide what is a fair amount to guarantee his appearance and to guarantee that he is not a danger. It is not to inflame, which is what is occurring.
So that's a situation where, I mean, that's almost, no, that is 10 times what the other, the police officer who lived out of state in a very similar situation, 10 times that guy's bail. That's not, and one of the things the court is supposed to do is try to avoid disparities in treatment of individuals. So you've got a cop who out of state who was given $100,000, and now the prosecutor wants $1 million. That's a big disparity.
What we need to do, Your Honor, is have a reasonable bail, as we've suggested, of $150,000, which is very high in these cases. Your court knows we've been involved in other situations where the bail has either been similar to that or slightly higher. It is, in my 40 years of experience, this request for $1 million is very excessive.
Now, so what Mr. Chesnoff did there was he came and he kind of looked at what the history of the cases were, and then he offered basically just a little bit more because it's a little more of an aggravated offense, basically. And by doing that, he comes off credible. Now, if he would have said, Judge, I think $10,000 would be more than enough, blah, 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 he doesn't sound credible. You have to have an argument that makes sense. This is really a sad case. It's an absolutely sad case. Henry Ruggs III is going to be, his football career is done, is absolutely done, or at least it is for now. He's going to do at least 2 years, and then he'll probably be on probation, some kind of parole after that. And these cases are what they are. They're very difficult to win. You can't. How are you going to win a case where the blood alcohol level is probably a certainty, depending upon, I don't know what the evidence is, but typically they know what they're doing, and typically, the blood alcohol is not really an issue. And then you've got the conduct. You have a dead body. You've got somebody who was traveling at a really high rate of speed in a residential neighborhood and caused just a horrific crash. I mean, look at this car. Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another edition of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, and today we are reacting to Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, and he just recently signed a $230 million contract. Now, let me tell you something a little bit about these NFL guys and pro athletes in general. They have to be really, really careful, in my opinion, where to put their penis. And the reason is they're targets. What do you think? Oh, if I get pregnant by this guy, I have an 18-year meal ticket, right? It doesn't matter what sport you're talking about. They are targets, and they have to be careful. Now, Deshaun Watson, they placed the allegations about him in front of a grand jury, and the grand jury failed to indict him. That is huge because you can indict a grand jury can indict a ham sandwich. You've heard that phrase before. And the situation where a prosecutor presents evidence, and here's the thing. The grand jury is a secret proceeding, so we don't have a transcript of it. We can't get a transcript of it, and there's no judge. There is no defense lawyer, so you don't have the defense lawyer doesn't have the option to write or ask any questions. And we don't know whether Deshaun Watson testified at the grand jury, and I doubt that he did. I'm sure that the prosecutor would have given him an opportunity, but the grand jury only hears and sees what the prosecutor presents. Typically, and all they have to determine is whether there's probable cause, right? Well, he is being sued civilly now by 22 different complaints, 22 civil complaints. That's a lot of complaints. Two of the massage, they find it amended petitions for cause of action of negligence and gross negligence. The negligence claim I don't really understand because it's negligence infers some kind of duty to the person owed and a breach of that duty. Generally, it's something not on purpose. And in this case, they said they had a duty to disclose his sexual proclivities, which I think is ridiculous. Oh, by the way, before you put your hands all over me, I get a hard-on when a woman touches me. I mean, give me a fucking break. I'm sorry. It just seems a little silly on its face. And you won't believe this one. He could have picked, his lawyer is probably a fine lawyer. But he's got a name that just really fits the case in a sense. Watson and his attorneys, who include famed Texas litigator Rusty Hardin, will likely argue that these allegations are false and that the customer client Watson owed no applicable duty of care, which is true, and that if he owed such a duty, he met it. Well, you don't owe somebody a duty, to hide your proclivities. Or I don't know exactly what happened between he and these massage therapists, and I don't think it's like the Bill Cosby situation. It's more of a professional setting, sort of like the setting with the Patriots owner, down in Florida, getting a rub. We call it a rub and tug. But here's the thing. So the judges ruled that you got to talk about this, okay? And he's got several different options. He can deny it. And then the question that the judge said he's got to answer is whether or not he's had sex with the other 18 massage therapists who are actually supporting him. He likes his massages, evidently. But he's got several different choices. Say he denied that he ever had sex with anybody, admit that he had sex with anybody, or don't answer the question, or invoke your Fifth Amendment right. If you deny it, and they're able to prove it otherwise, you may be subject to perjury, but perjury is really kind of a not really charged out that often. If you invoke your Fifth Amendment right in a civil context, they can hold that against you, and the jury can draw an adverse inference against you. Well, it's not like a criminal context. In a criminal context, you have the right against self-incrimination, right? And so you can say, I take the Fifth, and the jury and the prosecutor and the judge can't comment on it, and the jury can't use it against you. However, in a civil context, if you take the Fifth Amendment, the jury can infer something negative. Well, you must have something to hide because you're invoking the Fifth Amendment. They can make that inference. That's called a negative inference. Or he could not do anything, and if he doesn't do anything, then the judge will sanction him. And you've seen, like, Trump, for example, he's refusing to turn over documents, refusing to sit for a deposition, and the New York Attorney General has asked for $10,000 a day. Did you see what happened in the Alex Jones case where he's refused to cooperate? $25,000 a day, the judge said. And now, I guess I'll cooperate. Once the judge levied that sanction against him, so he's going to sit for a deposition, and he refused to otherwise. There's a lot of tools in the civil context that are available to make somebody talk. And in this case, he's got this $230 million contract. There's all kinds of reasons why he should either fight or not fight. There's, pros and cons to each. It's sort of like the Dalvin Cook case here in Minneapolis, where he's got an accuser, and they've asked for a 3-year delay in that, but I don't think that's going to go anywhere. and actually, I know people on both sides trying that case. So they have to be really careful to not lie, but at the same time, they have to put into context, because here's the other thing. If he agrees that he paid money for sex, with the other people, well, that's prostitution. But, and that might, it might get some disciplinary from the action from the NFL, but it's a misdemeanor, probably, in all reality. So it's probably not a felony. But so you can see he's got a lot of different things to waive. I do think it's absolutely interesting that the grand jury refused to indict. And that can be a function of one of two things. Either there just wasn't the evidence there, and the prosecutor needed some political cover to say, okay, I did this, and the grand jury didn't indict. Or it could be something more insidious in the fact that maybe the prosecutor is on his side and presents only what he thinks should be there, and the grand jury doesn't indict. Either way, it's easy to get somebody indicted because all they need to indict from the grand jury is probable cause, more likely true than not true, right? So we don't know, and because it's a secret process, them failing to find probable cause, we don't know what they base that on. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out and whether or not the NFL suspends him, and that's under investigation. There's a representative from the Players Association and from the NFL, and we'll see what happens. Roger Goodell does have the final say. I don't have a whole lot of faith in Roger Goodell. That guy makes $45 million a year for doing fucking nothing. That's just me. Anyway, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, it's interesting because all of a sudden you got all these people coming at you, and they're professionals, and they're professional masseurs, and him touching himself. I mean, what exactly did he do, and what are their damages? The fact that if this guy was a bum off the street, they wouldn't be suing him. The only reason they're suing him is because he's got a guaranteed contract for $230 million. And, some people have commented whether or not this guaranteed contract was a smart move, or I would bet you $1 to hold in a donut if he ain't playing, it ain't guaranteed. If he gets charged with a criminal conduct, or if I bet there's some out to pay that. If there's like a morality clause, there's a lot of these. If he's rendered unplayable by his own criminal action, I bet they don't have to pay it. That's my guess, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So anyway, this has just been a reaction, but just a little update on Deshaun Watson. As things progress, we'll follow it, and I'm all for. I know this actually kind of sounds like I'm more for Watson and against the women. I'm not either. I'm just analyzing the legalities as you go through this. And I do look at it from a defense perspective because that's what I am. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. So I have to look at it from his standpoint and from the standpoint of Rusty Hardon. So this is Bruce Rivers. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting us. I know Michael appreciates it. He's our brains behind the operation. Couldn't do this without him. So when you your comments, give him a shout out because he deserves a lot of the credit for what we do because he picks the topics and I just work here, man. So we're here 24/7. So give us all kinds of feedback. I'm Bruce Rivers, criminal defense lawyer, CLR Reacts. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, and spread the word. We'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, board-certified criminal defense lawyer. Today we're reacting to Bam Margera. Now let's just kind of, we'll talk a little bit about his background and tell you what's going on with him and some of the things that I see as I see it through the lens of what I do. Before we get to that, this is brought to you by eSign.com. eSign.com is an effective way to remotely do business. Let's say you are in the woods and people are after you, especially the Pennsylvania State Police. Well, you can't very well go out in the public now, can you? You need to get a lawyer because you got a warrant out for your arrest. So what do? You go to eSign.com, you download the app, you get 3 free signatures a month, and you sign a retainer agreement with a lawyer, and then he gets you out of everything just like I would. eSign.com. If it's not eSign, nobody signs. An e-signature is just as good as a regular signature, so just go ahead and use eSign.com. It's an effective way to remotely do business. You never know when you're going to need something like this. I know I use it all the time because I'm in the business and whatever. But download the app. If you need to get a business deal done, you're at the ready. So let's talk about Bam Margera. Now, remember, Bam Margera was part of the crew who had, all the Jackass movies. And I remember when those came out. Michael actually turned me on to them when he was a youngster. I think probably in middle school, if I'm not mistaken. And they're actually hilarious movies. They do crazy things, and I'm surprised that nobody's gotten more hurt. But like Steve-O on that show got sober. They lost one of their good friends, Ryan Dunn, in an accident in his Porsche. And now Bam Margera is got a warrant out for his arrest in Pennsylvania. According to police reports, he's at his family home, and he gets into an argument with his brother, and he leaves a really ominous note behind. If you call the effing cops, I'm gonna F you up, blah blah blah. I'm gonna kill everyone in here, and it really is just awful stuff. If you even fucking think of calling the police on me, I will officially fuck you up. And then he goes on to say that I'll kill you, I'll put a bullet in your head. He also said he would kill everyone else in the household. Now, and evidently there was a physical altercation not only with him, but with somebody that was on the road or somebody that was in his path as they called the police. What he did then is, the police came and he wasn't there. He took off into the woods. So now you've got a guy, doesn't seem to want to take any advice from anybody or stay sober. And so he's in a tailspin. And I just really hope somebody gets to him before he gets to himself. This is really a very high intensity situation. And the drugs and alcohol, if that's what we're dealing with here, aren't going to help anything. At one point, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he was worth like anywhere between $50 and $100 million. I mean, he was worth a lot of money. His folks were managing his affairs. Not sure if he's got any money left or not, but he has a son. I don't know if he's still married, but he's just on a tear. Now he's facing 4 counts of terroristic threats with the intent to terrorize another. One of simple assault and a final count of harassment while subjecting the other to physical contact. Here's the thing. In all honesty, in the broad scheme of things, those charges, while they sound, ominous, they're not that serious. But they probably don't feel anything less than just absolutely horrific to Bam. When you go on the run, this is what I worry about, and this is how these situations sometimes play out. You go on the run, and you run out of money, and then you get in a standoff, or you take yourself out. A lot of times these types of situations result in suicide. Whether this is a combination of mental health, which it certainly is, and or chemical health, which it seems like it is, what happens is these guys tend to inflate the gravity of what they're feeling, which compounds their legal situation. Now he's got a warrant, and with the threats that he's made, he's considered super dangerous. Whether he takes himself out, whether cops encounter him, and he tries to do suicide by cop. I mean, let's hope none of that happens. But there is nothing, and this is just a message to anybody out there who's been experiencing anything like this. You hear about people who are going through whatever, they're cheating on their wife, and then they eliminate their wife, they eliminate their children or whatever. Nothing is so bad that you have to go down that road. We've experienced it. Michael and I have experienced it firsthand. Watching the death of a loved one, at their own hand. There's got to be a better way. There always is a better way. And so the best thing that Bam can do right now is just find a flipping cop and turn himself in. Don't say anything. Don't do any self-snitching. but just because right now all they have is Jesse's statement that he said that he's going to kill everybody. Okay. That by itself is not that serious of a charge. You got an assault, which is like a domestic assault, but on a scale of 1 to 10, it's about a 3. 3, maybe a 4, if that. It's not so grave that you can't fix it. I mean, it's a very fixable problem. But here's the thing. When you have the history that Bam does, so you have a long history of partying to cover up what you are experiencing, the pain that he has been covering up, it's just been for years and years and years and years. And you think about it, all those guys in Jackass were his buddies. And he couldn't maintain sobriety enough to make it through the production of that film. And so now we have him on the run, which is somebody's on the run like this, it's really flipping dangerous. He's only been on the run for a day or two, so it's not, I've had clients that went on the run for, a month, and, they were glad they got caught at the end. I've had other clients who have been barricaded in their homes and took their own life when they got into a standoff with police. Hopefully he's not armed. Hopefully it ends peacefully. But I want everybody to take stock of where you are. If you're in a situation where your family is coming apart, and that happens a lot, and you don't know what to do, find somebody that gives you comfort. Go see a counselor. Go see a buddy. Go find your best buddy and sit down and talk things through. I mean, the state police in this case, they said that they responded to a report of a disturbance on Sunday around 11 o'clock a.m. Near Pocospan Township, which resulted in an alleged victim accusing Bam of being involved in some sort of physical confrontation. But when the cops got there, he was gone. So he ran into the woods, and now, when somebody's cornered like that, they're dangerous. They're dangerous to themselves, and they're dangerous to other people. And if he doesn't have any drugs or alcohol, which I'm sure he's probably jonesing for, it makes him even more dangerous. We don't have a situation where the cops are in the feel-good business. They just want to get him off the street any way they possibly can. And let's just hope it doesn't end with bloodshed. So let's say, for the sake of argument, they're able to find Bam and they bring him into court. The next process is determining bail. And when you go on the run like this, bail's going to be high, especially when you tell the family, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to put a bullet in your head, I'll kill everyone in the house. A judge does not want that on his shoulders or her shoulders. A judge does not want to be the one to let him out and then all of a sudden have him do something violent to his family or anybody else for that matter, or to himself. So, remember the two things that they talk about with bail. They talk about danger to the public and risk of flight, and we have both here. So the bail is probably going to be pretty high if and when they apprehend him. So when you have a situation like this, when you're talking about a judge and, if he pleads guilty or is somehow found guilty of anything, the one thing that they want to make sure is that it doesn't repeat. And so they're going to try to make sure that he doesn't use and to make sure that he gets counseling, some kind of, jail is not really the answer in a situation like this. Substance abuse treatment and counseling are the two things that they're going to really emphasize. And I bet you any money, and this happens a lot. So he goes to court, and if the family doesn't want to press charges, they don't really have a choice. It's the state that presses charges. But if they don't show up to court, the only way they know anything that what he did is by the statement of the people who were witnesses there, right? Like the brother Jesse. And so if Jesse doesn't show up to court, guess what? They have to dismiss the case. That happens a lot, especially in domestic situations where the wife doesn't want to testify against the husband, so she beats feet and doesn't show up to court. If she doesn't show up to court, they have to dismiss the case. That happens a lot. So let's just hope and pray that Bam finds a safe spot, that he takes care of these warrants, and we see him kind of get sober. I'd like to see that. So, and if you find yourself in anything close to this, get some help. Get some help. Don't let it escalate, because these things, these domestics, they escalate quickly, and they escalate in a bad, bad way. And I just hope Bam is not armed. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon. We had our first Patreon Zoom call last weekend, and it was really fun. We had somebody from Romania that talked a little bit about the Andrew Tate situation. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.